Of course, thank Accuracy in Media for this Reed Irvine Award. I got the opportunity to know Reed for years. In fact, one of the first people in Washington that I worked with, Reed. I was doing videos for him. I did a lot of projects for Accuracy in Media in the early days. And later, as an inspiration, went to work for Media Research Center, which was, would never have been possible without Reed Irvine's groundbreaking work. I really appreciate this award. So many people are behind this, and one of them actually is in the room. Craig Rucker of CPAC is here, who's the company that runs Climate Depot right there. So there's Craig Rucker, who made all this possible. But it's when you look at this whole global warming issue, and when it began, basically, in 1988, and where we are today, and how this award, by the way, that Accuracy Media is giving is possible, it is stunning. In 1988, 1988, the United Nations Climate Panel was formed. That was the end of science, the beginning of politics when it came to the atmosphere. And it was pretty grim business all the way up until pretty much 2008, when things really started to turn. But even when I joined the Senate in 2006, it was amazing because everyone was at their high point, but they had already put the seeds of their own destruction in. They chose, God knows why, they had two spokesmen for their cause. The United Nations, which the American people institutionally distrust, and Al Gore, one of the most divisive political figures in American history. A man who the closest presidential election, you're going to put him up as your spokesman. Someone who claims there's no debate, someone who's essentially arrogant, won't debate anyone, who as early as 1992 declared the science was settled. Well, Al Gore was the seeds of their own destruction, because by putting him as the face in the United Nations, you were never going to get more than at most half the American people to support your cause. And if I was a PR person advising the global warming movement, I would have said, you're using the UN and Al Gore, are you nuts? And of course it worked for a while. They had the Oscars for his film Inconvenient Truth. You had the Nobel Peace Prize shared by the UN and Al Gore. They were riding high in 2007. It was called the gold standard of scientific review. They were high-fiving. The deniers were thrown into the ash heap of history. We were compared to Holocaust deniers. And then something started happening, and I credit Gallup News Organization with this. By early 2008, the Gallup poll editor came out and said, well, something's going on here. The more we're talking about global warming, the more Oscars are given, the more Nobel Peace Prize are given, the more ABC News Bill Blakemore, the more CNN pounds the alarm, the public are growing more and more skeptical. And this started in 2008, and it just kept continuing and continuing to the point where the fall of 2009, more Americans believed in haunted houses than man-made global warming. And I'm not making that up. Science did, yeah. And this is before ClimateGate. And I don't know, I mean, it's incredible timing. Again, thanks CPAC for making this possible. Thank AIM for this award. But when I started Climate Depot in March of 2009, it was the equivalent of starting an anti-communist website in March of 1989. And then in November, the Berlin Wall falls. I'd love to take credit for it, but, but it was good timing. But going right now, it is just, the entire movement is in tatters. It has literally been exposed as subprime science, subprime economics, subprime politics. The bubble has burst. There's no other way to put it. I mean, across the board, even Katie Couric, CBS News, is covering this, questioning the UN conferences. The New York Times is being forced to do a little bit of coverage. The UK media deserves actually probably the best award coverage, whether it's the UK Guardian, UK Times, UK Telegraph. They have been pounding this on a daily basis, while the American media remains silent. So there's much more work for Accuracy in Media to do to pound the American media. They're going to eventually have to cover it. But what they're going to try to do is scapegoat it. There's going to be some resignations, and they're going to say, well, now we're reforming it. But you can't get past the basic science. I have a quick PowerPoint I want to run through here of some of the absurdities as this movement utterly and completely collapses around them. And one of the things that happened when I joined the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee in 2006, by the way, I'd worked for Rush Limbaugh from 1992 to 1996 as his man in Washington. And they were talking, Wes and Don were talking about the media back then. I would go to events in Washington, and the media, the Democrat politicians and their staff would have no fear of the media in 1992, 1993, 1994. In that quickly changed years later, but they had no fear of the media because the media wasn't aggressive. You go up to Republican politicians with a press pass, they'd be like, who are you with? I don't want to talk to the media, because Republicans were bashed. All you had were the three networks, PBS and CNN. Well, by the time, in 1992, Paul Weyrich launched America's Voice, or NET. Then Fox News came online in 2006. By the time 2000 came around, and now moving to 2010, now you go to Washington, and it's the Democrats running scared of the media because the new media has taken over. So this was all started by Reed Irvine in 1969. It was amazing to witness that sea change here. And again, in 1993, the Clinton White House seized my television camera for Rush Limbaugh, the television show. And that got the ire even of Helen Thomas, the dean of the White House press corps, who marched me into the White House press office, demanded they return the camera, and the White House later apologized. But and Helen Thomas had said in the history of the White House, she'd been covering it, I think, since at least Abraham Lincoln, or how many? That's an age joke there. But she'd been covering it maybe since Eisenhower or JFK. And no president had ever seized any television equipment like that. Not even the hated Richard Nixon, who they referred to as King Richard. But Bill Clinton did, and actually ABC News and NBC News actually covered it. Andrea Mitchell, just to show the shock, but it's an indication of, even back then, what? There's opposition media in the White House? Take his camera! I mean, that's the level of how far we've come since 1993.